and welcome to the Do the Best Work of Your Life video series. I'm Carissa, editor of HR Magazine, and this series is brought to you in partnership with the Access Group, which offers technology to help businesses work smarter. Throughout this series, we're exploring how artificial intelligence, AI, as well as data, analytics, and technology more generally, can help HR leaders focus on what matters most: people. You're watching episode 8 of the Do the Best Work of Your Life video series, which is all about how to fuel high performance and how to supercharge progression. But if you haven't already watched the other episodes of this series, there's still time. Visit the dedicated hub page online to access all the other videos and resources. Today's discussion focuses on performance and progression. As usual, I'm joined by three fantastic guests. Kieran is HR Director of Communications Business Modernise Partnership. Zoe is Director of Tech Consultancy, Rethink HR. And Ollie is our resident AI evangelist from the Access Group. Welcome, everybody. So let's start with you then, Kieran. I mean, what we know, kind of understand how to manage performance in a kind of legal setting where they clock their hours and their time, but what's it like managing performance in the creative industry?
I think it's difficult because I think people get in their own heads about how to manage performance. There's a lot of theory and legal kind of frameworks that you say you have to follow. I think when you strip it back, there's probably 3 principles that are really easy to follow by, which is probably clarity, communication, and accountability. If those 3 things are kind of followed, kind of regardless what level of role you are or what sector you kind of come from, some will have more structured, knowledge-based approach into a role that you're able to have a lot more flexibility on how you learn and what your objectives are. Other sectors, let's say frontline, where it's maybe more challenging to have that flexibility around it, follow those 3 principles, and I pretty much believe that you'll kind of get the best engagement from an employee.
So clarity, communication, accountability, right? Does that chime with you, Zoe?
It does, yes, because I think different sectors are challenging in terms of performance, and I think typically you can get managers that are promoted into a manager role. They're not as comfortable at goal setting and managing performance. So when you have a framework like that, I think it helps if you can develop them and have a model for them to follow, as well as the technology to help, which we'll come on to.
Yeah, we're getting there. Don't worry, don't jump ahead. We're getting there for sure. But in terms of managing that performance and tracking it, Kieran, how do HR leaders do that? And what are the main challenges that you've seen in your career?
So how we do it is you do target it to the type of manager and the type of employee that you want to do. Because there are tools out there. So let's take insights profiling as an example, as one way to kind of determine how best an employee engages, learns, kind of responds to feedback. So you kind of have to be able to take their individual approach, also married with how the manager is, because people always think that it's one-sided. The manager always has to liaise about how the employee reacts. However, there has to be a compromise because that manager is still a person, still an individual. So the employee also has to look at how they communicate with their manager as well. So we have the ability to be able to provide that kind of data to them to say, actually, you are 2 individuals. This is how you work. This is how you learn. This is how you communicate. Where's the middle ground? And there are some people that, for example, there'll be visual learners. There are others that are really data centric. So they need to see clear KPIs. They need to have structure. There are others that need a lot more autonomy, flexibility, to be able to be held account. And when we talk about objectives, I think one of the biggest things is I personally dislike is when people say, oh, you need a short, medium and long-term objective. Well, that's great for some, but someone might just be like, can I just see this month through and just try to tackle my day to day? And I feel like,
isn't it?
Yeah, because being too prescriptive can actually cause more damage, I believe, in all situations.
Yeah, because it's not like for like, is it? And we've had it quite often when back in my HR advisory days where managers are treating people exactly the same through something like a probation process, and you've got one person loving all the attention, regular meetings and detail, and another person feeling like they're not trusted, they're brought on to do a role, they should be given a lot more autonomy, they don't know why they're beholden into meetings so regularly and being micromanaged. So you've got the manager doing exactly the same thing, two different people. It's two different styles, two different outcomes, and one could go and the other could thrive. And yeah,
it's hard to translate those real people kind of characteristics into the tech. Ollie, tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so I think it boils down to, is it scalable? Because I think if you want to have a degree of standardization, because you do have to make, when you're performance managing, you've got to make sure that there is, common ground. So that it's the orange and orange comparison stuff. But to do that and to personalize it at the same time and meet the needs of each of both the manager and the employee, that's a lot to do. And a lot of products and the software is difficult to support multiple strands at the same time until you bring AI into the equation. And of course, it's brilliant at doing that, right? Personalizing the development plan for the individual, coaching the manager through to work better with that personality type, but at the same time standardizing and make sure there's a common benchmark for what is good quality and what is the outcomes that need to be managed, so that when you've got person A and person B, you are comparing them in the best way of life.
in a fair way.
In a fair and equitable way across different similar roles, across different managers, different individuals. But to crunch that data, to provide that personalization, historically was tough. It would be a full-time job, whereas now it's done pretty much instantly.
And a tactful way to do that is, for example, taking, let's say, an insights profile, some reviews, some 360 feedback or whatever it is, matched against, let's say, a competency-based framework, which is assessed on the role that you've hired that individual for, or a job description. So whilst I'm saying don't be too prescriptive, you can use those frameworks, merge them together, put that into an AI, and actually the summary's there.
So it's like getting that succinct summary of what somebody is doing, but also it's helping you coach at the same time.
Right, exactly. I would say that because, again, I know it is quite emotive sometimes when you're either being the manager or the employee being performance managed in one way or another. Either it's good or bad, there's still a lot of emotion, and AI is great at just doing that step back. Here's all the data. Let's arrange it in a way that makes sense for you to deliver and for the person to receive. And when you mix that together, I think it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think it can give managers confidence, because I think if you're doing things like an annual review, which some still do, or a slightly bigger review, I know, but there are still clients that do use that model. I think it's a lot to kind of remember, and if people have got big teams as well, where you can use technology to prep for your meetings and know that you're actually kind of pulling out data from one-to-ones that have been recorded. I mean, it's only as good as the information you feed it. So it is how you use that technology, and the more you put into it, the richer the support and the information you can get out of it is. But I think managers' time, it will save it, but also it's the accuracy, and they can go into those conversations having confidence that it's referencing the right bits. And I think also that has an impact on the employee, knowing that the manager cares and is keeping up to date with what they're doing and how they're doing it. So yeah, I'd have loved to have had this back in the day of doing a team.
I was going to ask Ollie like how AI can help feed into appraisals, but you kind of touched on that already. It's all right. I'll allow it.
Yeah, but it's a flow, and I think there's, think of it sort of slightly laterally. When you go into an appraisal, you are being judged, right? You are and as an employee, sometimes your emotions might get the better of you, and you can use AI to almost rehearse. Yeah. Based on my performance today, what questions will my manager ask me? So that, no, I'm serious, right? So then you can say, so you're prepared, because what happens is some people aren't good at on the spot.
Or very nervous about going to that kind of meeting, whether they're top performer or not.
Yeah, and you've got a neutral partner that you can practice with, that prepares you for your, to be your best version of you during your appraisal meeting. And I think that's an underlooked part of what AI can offer, in terms of, and especially 24/7 to every single person in your organisation. I mean, that's scale.
And taking it to that other level, what do I need to do for that career progression piece? What questions do I need to be asking my manager? What interest do I need to be showing in certain things in order for them to know and recognise my potential and what I want to do for a career path?
And it also goes back to these have to, whatever approach or whatever tools you use, they have to be meaningful. There is no point walking into a situation where you've already decided what an outcome is going to be, because that has no purpose or meaning. So then, stripping it right back to what I said at the beginning of people, I believe, have the fear in their own mind of overthinking it, is if you have the principle of no surprises. So I'm walking into no surprises, then that offers that equitable approach that we're kind of talking about. So that employee knows that they're not walking into being totally criticized, because they know the challenges that they've been set and they're facing, and they have to talk them through. Likewise, the manager, they should know actually what the employee is going to raise with them, because it's already kind of been that open relationship.
Yeah, it's kind of using technology to build on those core principles and those like best practice principles. It sounds like you're saying, Kieran. Am I right?
Absolutely.
And I think there's kind of nudges to actually move people from what I think is quite outdated now with the annual appraisal to more regular feedback. And that really kind of feeds into that as well. I think you can get prompts, it helps you capture bits, it helps you summarise bits, it helps you prepare for it. People are more likely to engage with that rather than building it up to a big meeting. It's just regular feedback. Development should be ongoing.
That makes total sense. And I know I'm going to move on to talk a little bit about skills, because obviously skills plays a key part in progressing and developing people. And we did talk about this a bit in episode 6, which focused on learning. But how can technology help HR leaders ensure that they have the right mix of skills? Ollie, do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, let's be honest here, right? The future and the AI impacting the workforce is still quite unknown, right? There's a huge amount of unknown. What roles do we need? What skills do we need? It's a little bit of a grey area. And anyone who says they've got a plan for the next 2 years, exactly what roles they need and skills they need, I mean, we'd have to have a side chat on them, because it's take them aside, because it's so unknown. And I think, again, AI is your friend here, because you can adapt, you can react quickly, you can personalize based on the individual's needs and your company needs and direction. You can analyze your skills that you have available and forecast and say, well, if A or B route was the route I'm looking at, what would I need to do for that? So you can do what if analysis and create these things. It would take you forever to do this, right? Then the whole point of where AI comes in, you can imagine different futures and forecast the skills that you need based on different potential outcomes. And this is, it sounds like science fiction, but it's done in seconds. Yeah. So what you can do is be better prepared for an uncertain future. And as soon as you start to find, it's moving in that direction, you can create the materials you need in nanoseconds.
And look for the profiles of people as well, and the people that are interested in the development areas of the skills and things that you're trying to build. I think we were having a conversation just before recording this about not everybody wants to progress, but I think that it's really useful to be able to personalize people's career paths and what they want to do. So if you've got the skills and you've done all of that wizardry, magic with AI, then can you actually look at your people and look at the skills and look at who does want to learn certain bits and pieces, and how do you influence that, and how do you engage them, and what is that kind of transition piece. But yeah, lots and lots of organisations are looking at building their own skills in-house. So retention is super important. If they're going to get people in and really invest, they need to be working on their retention strategies as well as part.
Absolutely, retention and succession. And if people are going to be, if we're going to introduce all these newfangled ways of developing, tracking skills, how does that sound to you, Kieran? Is that practical on the ground? Is that what are organisations receptive to this?
I mean, the question is technology and AI equitable? Probably right now, no, because I think it's an education piece. I think there are free softwares, there are expensive softwares, there are still tools that people probably are using AI that they don't know it's AI, right? So I think that's quite one thing that I probably will say. I don't know if it's going to be controversial to HR, is about retention. Is absolutely, people may not have the desire to progress, and absolutely fine. As businesses evolve, if your people don't evolve, we need to celebrate their success and we need to help them move on. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. And I feel like sometimes resignations are always seen as a taboo, right? And I'm kind of like, are you going to be living your best life, and are you going to be happy going somewhere that hasn't now aligned with our new vision? Because if that's the case, then how do I help you get there? So I think what we just need to be mindful of is how do we take these people on our journey with us through the education, through the kind of implementation of systems, making sure that we are mapping their desires to progress. And like we said earlier, progression doesn't have to mean promotion or line management, which is also a tricky thing to do.
Yeah.
Progression is, am I learning something new? And am I being able to deliver and be happy in my place of work?
Job satisfaction.
100%.
It's doing the best work of your life.
I
Very
mean,
popular video series, but you know.
Ironic plug-in. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so it is difficult, but it's open mind, no surprises. It's clarity, communication, and accountability. Back to those principles.
97% of HR leaders believe they have significant skills gaps. How do they go about plugging those skills gaps? And realistically, how do we ensure that people can actually progress in organisations, Kieran?
I think that we will always have a skills gap because we are forever evolving. And I actually think we need to learn from our people as to what they want to do and what they can do and open their opportunities so they can teach us. Because, for example, in HR, working where I work, they're talented consultants. I could not do what they do. I don't know half of what they do because they do something. So I'm not there to tell them what to do. I need them to come to me to kind of say, this is what I need. This is a new avenue. This is a new business opportunity. So how do we go and get it? So then that's that kind of working together to achieve it. When it comes to upskilling specifically on AI, not to sound really corny here, but I don't know, you maybe know who said AI, for example, won't take over jobs, but someone who learns AI and implements it quicker may. So then it's making sure that actually, are we looking ahead to kind of say, how do we protect our people and how do we give them the resources and tools in order to progress to close that skills gap?
Enablement.
Yeah, because, you are not going to win at anything in life, as we all know, by someone telling you this is what you have to do, go and do it. Because what's that enablement? Was there an empowerment? Where's my accountability in that?
I'd like to follow on that because I think that's a great point you made. I think irrespective of that skills gap, you will have two classes: people who use AI to bridge that gap and they use it now to stay with the latest development, and those who aren't. And unfortunately, I agree with you. I think that the people who aren't embracing it now are going to quickly get left behind because it's moving at a rapid pace. And those who use AI to augment their skills and to close their skills gap will close it faster. It's just, that's just plain to see.
Yeah, I hear that. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I think it is, if somebody is a good performer today, if they're not constantly progressing and learning, the curve kind of goes like that. And if you stay like that, they end up actually being a poor performer, even if they stay at that same level. So I think that constant progression and what that looks like, especially if it's not career progression or promotions and things, is really important to deal with and look at the skills around that.
Which I want to link it back to being too prescriptive. Because let's say someone joins in a role and you've got this job description, 2 years later, it's naturally going to evolve, right? So if you are only measuring those metrics against what we employed them for previously, and you are not getting information from them and talking to them to kind of say, how has the role evolved for you? Should we change it? It's okay that, your KPI was X 2 years ago. If that's not the case, tell me. And how do we change that without saying you've got to go through a promotional process to change it?
Ooh, but if you're capturing all your one-to-ones and all of your performance metrics in a system, can it advise you on what you need to update on the job description, Ollie?
Well, yeah, exactly. And also,
in discussion with the humans.
Yeah, of course. But that future, that role in 1 year's time, is that role infused with AI and supercharged with AI. It's just that is the new linear, will be a non-linear future where people are superpowered by AI, and the role will naturally change. But, again, it's just about adopting it, going with it, and embracing it now because the future is supercharged by AI.
I never used me I was employed by an organization to come in to lead a HR function, and one of the things is to be updated and write policies. I'm never going to write a policy again in my life. And I'm so happy. I am delighted that I get to say, absolutely not.
I've progressed beyond this.
Because, tell you what, can you write me updated policy on a new neonatal policy that's been launched by the government? Here's the link to the website. Here's our tone of voice from our website. Can you shape it? Read, does it look good?
Done.
Great. Okay, well, that's 5 minutes of my time.
Writing policies is not the best work of your life.
But it makes us feel happy.
Yeah. So my role, my responsibilities, my expectations of what my employer employs me to do has completely changed, and I am here for it.
Which is great. I totally get that. And let's talk a little bit, and we've touched on it before, but benchmarking, how in terms of the progression piece. And now we talked about developing people, but there are some people out there who you've managed, you will have experienced, they just want their pay rise, right? And they're like, how can I get to that next pay rise? And how can organizations even begin to map and benchmark where their employees are in terms of pay scales? How can technology help with that? Can you kick us off, Ollie?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about visibility, right? And again, and mapping expectations and levels, right? So if you've got an understanding internally of what the benchmark is for a specific role in your own company, that's a good start, because you open yourself up to all sorts of challenges if you've got pay discrepancies for similar roles. And I would argue that quite a lot of customers, people out there will have unknown discrepancies within roles. So I think the very first thing you've got to do is understand the lay of the land in your own organization. And sometimes, because it's siloed under different managers, having that view across per role and categorize it, depersonalize, step back and say, is this fair and equitable, and what is the banding that we have for each of these roles? Again, guess what? AI can bring that information back up and display it. And again, it's again depersonalizing it, not making it emotive, and just saying, for these skills and these roles, here is the bandings that we have today, and let's try and, again, the next time you get the opportunity, let's try and make sure that we level that playing field.
I think as a senior HR director or whatever level you're at, if you're looking at this kind of thing within an organisation, to be faced with those kind of tools to help you, it's suddenly an exciting task, and something that you can really be strategic about, really help impact with the organisation, rather than dreading it and thinking, oh, where do I start? All of this stuff that you've got. I've done benchmarking 10 years ago, and it's not something I'd want to revisit, but all of this stuff makes me really excited to be in the HR space, and actually the tools that you've got at your fingertips and the impact, the real impact that can have for businesses. But it is, I think people are still finding these tools and are still skeptical and need to test them out and find what's right for them, what's the right approach. So getting advice and I think.
And this is the benefit of you have to really have all your data in one place. Right? You really kind of do need to leverage, try and bring as much of it together to get those insights. Because I think we've talked about it a lot. It's about automate the admin, the boring parts of your job, right? And then it's analyze across all of those data sets, and then accelerate the things that you want. And it's no different here. You want to accelerate that journey to an equitable future where you're paying the right amount to the right people for the right role that they're doing. Right?
But it's a personal task as well, isn't it? I imagine, Kieran, you've got your managers, or you've got your managers and their direct reports, and they want to progress within the organisation, and that is really personal data. What's the trust like between managers wanting to give that data into a system? Like, is there work to be done there to kind of trust that technology to do that job?
Yes, there is, and it goes back to the education piece. But it also depends on what system you are using, because Modano, we're very fortunate with an insights team. We've been able to build an AI system, so everything that we put in is contained and it's controlled and it's secure, so it's trustworthy. Yeah. But and I know when you purchase different levels of systems, they can be, but that's a lot of money. So then it comes to the equitable thing to say, can an SME, can a not-for-profit, do you get to kind of use those things? And I guess it comes back to, in terms of trust, is, words matter. And as a HR, when your team, you want to engage, you want to empower, they're my guys, and they have to know that I have their back. So when I turn around and say, actually, I know that everyone is fairly paid, I'm going to have to put my money where my mouth is and actually prove to them. Now, that isn't about showing every single person what the salary is. But one of the things that I did learn in my previous role for a not-for-profit, my CEO once said to me, as long as we're in a position that if everyone's salary was left out on the table, everyone would be okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't be embarrassed.
Absolutely. And you take things like that, snippets with you in life, and that's where you work with your employees to say, I've got your back, trust me on this. But there comes a point of, there are emerging technologies that we can prove that we're on it. And so yes, there is trust, but that trust comes from the human approach. based on the data that you're able to.
And that's what I was going to ask you about. So exactly that point, the trusting between like humans are still required alongside this data, right? I'm sure you're seeing that with your clients all the time.
And in the delivery of it as well, you've still got to pick it out. You've still got to test it and make sure that you're happy that it's giving you the right information. You've got to be credible in front of your team as well. So I think it can bring really valuable insights to your attention. Then you can delve deeper and understand that more. But I think in the performance space, it is really exciting what technology and AI can do. I've still got clients, honestly, that struggle to just do bespoke forms for performance, especially if they've acquired different businesses and they're sort of a mix of different types of delivery and skills. It's quite a challenge. So this might seem a bit of a leap to some people, but I do think technology can help them get there as well.
But it does go back though to what we said. I think we've said it a few times, which is as long as your AI system is company secure. Right?
Yeah.
So it's purely ring fence for your own company. It's not being used to train any models itself. It's entirely your own instance. That it's role based. So make roles and permission based. So you can't let the wrong person see the wrong instance.
When it's linked to a HR system, it's great.
Yes,
you've got all of that in
You've
place.
got all of that in place. And then the final one is that personally private. And again, going back to trust, you want to make sure that someone isn't spying on what everyone's asking and what everyone's doing, and there has to be that trust there.
Right? Yeah.
It's the basics. So you've got to make sure your supplier is both all of those things. Your AI supplier has to make sure it's company secure, role and permission based, but also personally private.
We also have a role though as humans, whatever role you are. It's not just HR. It's about being a decent part of the employment cycle. Is AI will continue to have a bias. Regardless there will always be mistakes. And now it is emerging technology and we are emerging learning. So it is based on the prompts and the questions and how you're training your particular AI to produce the results. So it's the more and more you're using it and testing it. So, we use it all the time. I still think that I'm probably a year away from kind of really understanding how it's going to work for me to the point of effectiveness. So, these biases and these errors that it will naturally, play out, we have to play a role to look at that, to say, where is it going wrong?
Where can people start? Where can businesses start with this, Ollie?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it goes back to, I sort of want to bring it back to the skills gap thing. I think one of those skills that you've mentioned there is prompting AI, because AI is only as good as the prompt that you give it. And I would say that you've got to start now. You've got to start now. Make sure that you've got something that is company secure, personally private, and role and permission based. But get onto it now, because the faster you can learn how to interact with AI, it is a skill. Prompt engineering is actually then you could even say to it, how do I get the best out of you? And it will tell you, which is really, really quite cool, isn't it? How do I ask you the right question to get the best out of you? It will answer and give you that stuff. So you've got to start now.
Yeah, but to simplify it, taking it back to HR practice, right? This is coaching. Right. 101 coaching. Go back 10 years. You sit next to someone and you kind of be like, okay, so what is it you want to improve on? How are you going to do that? Where are you going to do? That is all we're doing on a language model, right?
Absolutely. And I think the investment in training, maintenance, development of that is sort of no different. Well, it is different to a human, but you've got to invest in it like you have. I mean, we do. We just need to implement it. And there are already clients that do have teams where there's somebody managing it, but they are AI teams.
Right.
As in they are agents. So
they're agents. So they're actually training, learning.
Right.
They are delivering all of that to their agents, but they're not people. They are AI. Yeah. Exciting.
But it's a new world, people. It's a new world.
And it's changing really rapidly as well. I think, it's 24/7. It's never going to be grumpy. It's always going to be there for you. And how many companies have a really solid mentoring and coaching programs in place where you've got a 24/7 coach,
so it doesn't have a bad day.
It doesn't have a bad day. Yeah,
that'd be nice.
That would be nice. And so quickly, let's touch on succession planning then. How can technology feed into that?
Well, I think it's sort of back to the analytics and information that you get as well. I think we've not really touched on exits and exit interview and data and information as well. But it can highlight, as it has done for a while now, where there's people that haven't had the development and do they want it, haven't had pay rises. Is there anything in surveys and things that's indicating that people might be at risk of leaving? But I think it can also really help recognise those roles that are going to be really hard to replace, the ones where you do need to be taking 2-3 years to really invest, develop, shadow, succession, someone to take that role. It's not going to be a 6-month piece of work. So yeah, identifying what those roles are, but identifying the people also that could potentially do that role as well in the future, and then what those skill gaps are and what the development is that will take them to that.
And ordinarily, if that, using traditional tools, that would take a really long time, and you'll get distracted. Something comes up, and you move on to something else. Someone leaves, and then it's a fire drill,
again.
right? It's this is what this is the reality. Whereas again, AI in the background, chugging through this and helping you with alternate plans in the background, and not forgetting and making sure that it's constantly being updated is another big value proposition of AI embedded.
I hear ya. Well, let's somehow we're coming to the end of our time. So, key, quick fire question then, and I'm going to ask each of you, what's the one thing that HR leaders should take away about how technology can help with progressing people and developing people? Kieran.
Right now, don't overthink it. You have to measure the size of organization you're in, kind of like the commerciality around it, and have a look at the options around you. And that could be going to conferences, to HR tech, to understand what's out there. You don't always have to buy off the shelf, but I think you have to take a measured approach and try and just take every opportunity you can to work with something, whatever it is.
Give it a go.
Yeah. Don't be frightened.
I think it's taking people on the journey. So listening to what your managers could get excited about using AI, trialing things, testing things out, having a look at the impact. But I do think there's a lot of people that are still a little bit nervous or skeptical or not sure. But if you actually find some of the problems you're trying to solve, work with people in order to embed, find the right products and actually roll it out. So yeah, I'll come at it from the human side.
No, it's perfect. And then conversely,
yeah, my one is always the same thing. It's you've got to start making a move now. I would advise, if you can't get a personally private and secure version of AI, you can take out any sensitive information. Go on to any of the available AIs, LLMs that you've got out there, and just say, here is my business challenge. Here's my challenge as a manager, or here's my challenge as an employee, and see what you get back. Also, remember, ask AI how best to get the best out of it, because it can train you. It can train you on how to be a better prompter so that you can get more out of it. So just experiment, get out there and use it, because it's coming, and it's coming rapidly fast.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, panel. It's been an incredible discussion. Hope you enjoyed it.